Hey guys, Crave here, and a lot of good games are coming out over the next few months with reimaginings or some new ones. So you got Cyberpunk, which is a bit further than the others, and you also have some that are just right around the corner, like an expansion to Remnant from the Ashes or the PC release of Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, somewhere in September is another remaster or remake, or however you want to call it, and it's called Kingdoms of Amalur. The original version of this game came out about 8 years ago, and it sadly didn't get the attention it deserved. Surrounding the game were also some issues with the studio, and, well, then its eventual demise into bankruptcy. So, even as a great game, Kingdoms of Amalur never really got the support that it needed or should have gotten. So here we are in 2020, and an announcement trailer was shown off for the re-reckoning or remaster of Amalur, and honestly it got me excited. I always thought that the Amalur of 2012 was great, but it was rough in some parts. So here's to hoping it gets the proper attention this time around, but with some things I personally hope it could improve. They did say stunning visuals on the game's landing page, and from the screenshots we've seen so far, it does look like they will deliver on that aspect. One thing that would be great to include, and is something to really a bit small, but it's something to adjust the field of view settings. It would be great to have the ability to change how much you could see of the game through an FOV slider. PC players were able to get around this through some standard tools that change the field values, but it would be better to have something naturally in the in-game settings. Being able to adjust FOV in Amalur would be great help as it would complement the gameplay. Amalur has a very fluid combat system, but FOV can limit what you try to see when you try to dodge enemy attacks. There are times when the game automatically does this for you or automatically adjusts the view settings, but having something permanent while walking around would be a nice touch. Another thing is that Amalur could have better ultrawide support. You could set the game to 2560 by 1080, but going higher in ultrawide resolutions like 1440 bugs out the quest list, and it does make some weird things. Some things in the game world look very weird. So I think this also happens in 4K, but I don't have a panel like that to test. In any case, I hope they put out better support and ensure that the black bar scenarios are avoided for ultrawide. Combat in Amalur 2012 was fast and fluid, yet you also had the option of being deliberate. If you didn't like the committed movements and animation locks in some of the recent games over the last 5 years, like Dark Souls or games of the sort, then Amalur was a treat. If you had just cast a spell or had just swung your weapon at one enemy, you could still dodge roll whenever needed. Now that really just offered more flexibility in the combat of Kingdoms. In addition, healing was also very easy to do via a radial menu system, so you just had to pause the game and choose the healing vial or different potion you wanted to use. There was also a quick button you could press just to heal back up. So again, the playstyle in Amalur was really just relaxed and flexible. However, one thing that Amalur could improve on was the impact of your weapons and the weight around them. The game's attacks and combats wasn't all around floaty, but there were some aspects that needed a bit more work. This was more obvious when you wielded hammers or big two-handers. Some animations had the impact factor, but some didn't. Adding more weight to weapon hits would definitely improve the feel of fights. I'm also hoping that they improve the sound effects upon weapon impact. They were good back then in 2012, but I think 2020 deserves better. There's an option to go with a stealth-type character in Kingdoms, but it was often limited in scope. There are those assassination-type moves when you open up in combat, but it was limited by two things. So the first is that everyone would basically be alerted once you open up on an enemy, which forced you to engage in open combat. You will get an ability later in the game which allows you for soft resets of sorts in combat, but it just doesn't fully encourage an assassin playstyle. Now this could be the design choice for the whole game, and it might be difficult to implement some changes. Second thing is that enemies are often facing the general direction of your character, or enemies are often aware of where your character is. That almost outright removes the possibility of stealth unless you invested so much into a particular skill which limits your enemy's sight range. So again, the enemy setup just diminishes the stealth-oriented gameplay. If the overall design in Amalur requires more active combat, then stealth-type characters should have the option to control some, not all, mobs in a group while going for an outright one-hit kill on another. Another suggestion to improve stealth in Amalur or Kingdoms of Amalur is allowing the vanish type ability to be able to execute one character, vanish, and then perform another execution before engaging the rest of the group. Both abilities that I suggested could be on some sort of cooldown system. Now, the difference between this and the existing smoke bomb mechanic is that your character won't technically be flagged as engaged. So this basically just gives a better feel of stealth. When you explore the world of Amalur, there is a small amount of disconnect when you find yourself having to go through instance zones and seeing that the inside of those areas aren't actually that large. Now, dungeons are excusable of course, but it's strange when you visit certain areas in the game and you find yourself that there isn't much going on. There are two places early on in the game that you can visit that are instance. What's strange is that getting inside of them isn't any different in terms of size compared to the first town you visit. So, just a quick one really, but I think that a more seamless experience for some of the smaller instance areas would be better. This should also add to the immersion factor as loading screens can break the feeling. Now, this last bit is a tough ask, but I'd like to see a slight improvement in either the voice acting for quest givers or the delivery of quests. Some quest-related NPCs do fine work in giving out their lines, but others just feel a bit flat. For example, there are some of these quests in the game which are supposed to make you feel some form of dread or a certain amount of fear, but they don't really do anything. Given that we are going to get a remaster of the visuals, I just hope that the same applies to the audio part of the game. Another concern I want to add is maybe reworking the side quest rewards to improve them and make them worthwhile. So oftentimes you get these randomly worthless drops from chests and mobs, but sometimes you get really good ones, which oftentimes makes some of the quest rewards and even some of the boss rewards pretty much useless. So maybe just some form of reward scaling might be good so that you can still get the feeling of progression when completing quests or downing bosses. And those are the 5 things that I'd like to see improved in Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning when it finally comes out this September. Well, assuming that the release date doesn't move again. Now, I'm sure some of the old-time players have suggestions or other suggestions, so just leave them in the comment section below. Again, you got Crave here. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.